Many people get the idea that living in a giant mansion would be cool, but most don't have the kind of money needed to get into the home of their dreams. But just because you don't have millions of dollars doesn't mean you can't get yourself a nice big house or mansion for really cheap. But sometimes that cheap price comes with creepy things or other circumstances that force people to reconsider buying a home. We even found houses that you could buy for less than $10. That said, check out these 10 mansions we found that no one wants to buy. San Francisco home for $1. You've heard time and time again that San Francisco real estate is expensive. That's usually true, but not for this home. It's a historic single-family house that's on the market in Hercules, California for $1. But here's the thing, no one wants to buy it. Back in 2010, the town of Hercules bought the house known as Historic Home Number 54 and called it Queen Anne for its Victorian style. They put down their $1 with plans to renovate and preserve it. They cut the home in half to move it to the city's corporation yard to start work on it. However, they eventually decided they couldn't devote the money or resources needed to finish the project and put it back on the market. Whoever buys this home will have to move it off of the city's property and use their own money to restore it, which includes, putting the two halves of the house back together. It's not known if anyone bought the home or not, and it could have just been demolished, but it was quite a decent home in 2005. Kentucky mansion sold for $1. Well, it's the season for haunted houses. And this house, which recently sold for the whopping sum of $1, is downright spine-tingling. It's known as the Auerbacher Clement House, and the Romanesque-style mansion was built for a prominent coffee merchant named Samuel Auerbacher in the late 19th century in Louisville, Kentucky. Over the years, it was transformed into the offices of a tax business before it was ironically taken over by the city in 2005 because of unpaid taxes. The former grand building fell into disrepair, suffering from partial structural collapse, water damage, and vandalism. In 2008, the Louisville Jefferson County Land Bank Authority sold the property for $1 to architect Scott Kremer, who had plans to restore the building and use it for community purposes. But his plans fell through, and he eventually returned the building to the city. In 2014, the bank once again sold the property for $1 to Oracle Design, who wanted to restore the mansion and turn it into apartments. A representative for Oracle said that the Auerbacher Clement House was targeted by them for a historical residential rehabilitation project. But you never know, this could end up back on the market for $1. Houses in Ololai, Italy for $1. In Italy last year, there were about 200 homes in the town of Ololai, which went on sale for around $1. Well, actually, each one cost €1, which is currently the equivalent of $1.25. But there was a catch to this rock-bottom bargain basement price, and that was that you had to restore the place and use your own money, which would cost about $25,000. The Italian initiative was meant to bring people back to the beautiful and historic town on Sardinia Island. Ololai's current population was only 1,300 residents. One could say the island was the Italian Detroit. Italy wants to get this place populated again, and that means doing anything to get people back into the homes. And by the time word got out, there were already 100 people interested. But for some reason, people just didn't want to return or live there. New Jersey mansion for $10. Next up, we have a New Jersey mansion that's worth about $1.3 million and was on the market for only $10. That sounds like a really awesome deal. However, the one condition upon the sale was that the new owners move it off the property. Some real estate group bought the land that the 3,900 square foot mansion currently sits on, and they want to build 8 houses on the property. But first, they need to get rid of the pesky mansion. But there's just one problem. The house can't be torn down because of a deal approved by the New Jersey's Town Planning Board, who wanted it preserved. It's old and was built in 1906 by Dudley S. Van Antwerp, and was once occupied by Aubrey Lewis, the first African American to captain a football team at Notre Dame. However, Lewis passed away in 2001. Now it's up to the person who eventually buys the heavily discounted house to move it off the property, which could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it turns out that the seller will give $10,000 to help with that move. 1875 mansion. In 1875, a wealthy chair manufacturer named Sylvester K. Pierce designed and built a magnificent Victorian home. It has 10 beds, 2.5 baths, 11-foot ceilings, marble fireplaces, and all original windows, doorknobs, hinges, and floors. But even with all these exquisite details, the home is on sale for just $329,000. That's roughly the same price as an average 3-bedroom home. However, this one has some secrets. The beautiful mansion is known as one of the most haunted homes in New England. The house has experienced so much paranormal activity that it's been investigated by TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventurers, My Ghost Story, and many more. Some say they've seen the figure of a busy servant girl. Others, a little boy who stares longingly out the front window. To some, a sad woman has appeared. Considering the many different forms the house has taken, a private home, a Freemason hall, and many other things, it's no wonder that the mansion has seen quite a number of colorful figures. So what do you think about this hair-raising house? Would you live here despite its haunting past? Remeyer's Hollow, Pennsylvania. Known locally as the Hex House, this was once the home of Pennsylvania Dutch powwow doctor Nelson Remeyer, who practiced a blend of faith healing and witchcraft. It seems that Remeyer ran afoul of another local witch, John H. Blymeyer, who claimed Remeyer had placed a hex on him, causing his bad health. On November 28, 1928, Blymeyer and 2 teenaged accomplices broke into Remeyer's house and demanded the hex be undone. When they were not appeased, the intruders dispatched Remeyer and then set the home ablaze. However, the house didn't burn down, and that seemed to confirm Remeyer's powers. The resulting trial, known as the York Witch Trial, and the underlying stories of modern witchcraft caused a sensation at the time. All 3 men were convicted and imprisoned, but all were eventually released. Descendants of Nelson Remeyer opened the Hex House to the public in 2007 with displays from his life. The house currently appears to not be open to the public, and there's nothing identifying it as Remeyer's Hollow Hex House and nothing listing open hours, which means this house could end up being sold cheap. Historic mansion for $1,000 house in Detroit. Nope, this isn't a joke, but part of a plan in Detroit, USA, to battle one of the city's biggest problems, blight. With widespread abandonment and nearly 80,000 vacant city-owned structures, the city began selling nicer properties in an online housing auction. Some of them are real stunners, like this 4,200 square feet Tudor-style home, which dates back to the 1920s. The house sits in a historic neighborhood with wide boulevards, spacious lots, gorgeous early 20th century houses, and some downright huge mansions. It has 7 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, 69 windows. With all that, you'd think it would be listed for a lot more money than $1,000. Some of Detroit's most noteworthy residents, from Henry Ford to Boxer Joe Louis, have lived in the same neighborhood. But the place needs a lot of work, including repairs to the windows, doors, fireplace, and hardwood floors. It also needs electrical wiring, plumbing, kitchen, and the bathrooms replaced. But when you're done, you'll be living in the kind of house that lets you pretend you're a railroad tycoon. Amityville Horror House, Long Island, New York. The Amityville horror story has given people chills for years, and, unlike other scary stories, has connections to actual happenings which occurred in the house in Amityville, New York on Long Island. In 1974, The DeFeo family called this spacious Long Island manor home. But something really terrible happened that made this house famous. The house has had 4 owners since then, who all made reports of paranormal activity. It is the exact same house that inspired the Amityville Horror book and movies. The house sold in 2016 for $605,000, more than $200,000 less than its asking price, according to real estate records. The seller bought the house in 2010 for $950,000, but because of its history, no one wants to buy it or live in it. Although it is restored, the house features period details such as oak floors and leaded glass. After the book and film were released, many people tried to visit and get into the house, but local authorities changed the original address so it wouldn't be easy to find. 1914 Georgian Revival Home for $1,000. In Boston Edison, there is a 1914 Georgian Revival Home which has a staggering 6,665 square feet, 6 bedrooms, and 2.5 bathrooms. It has a tile fireplace, leaded glass, original woodwork, and other architectural details, though it is definitely in need of repairs. It is another mansion home which can be bought for just $1,000, and by the time you were done fixing this one up, you'd have a real investment. The UK's €1 houses. Back in July 2015, the UK had a plan to sell a lot of vacant homes in a place called Cobridge, which is a post-industrial area with a canal, old industrial buildings, and terraces that had become a bit forlorn of late. It's not the kind of place you'd think to live, and that is why the UK decided they needed to sell some of these homes for just $1.25. That's right, you could buy an unused home here, which were originally built for coal miners but then abandoned. But there is a catch to buying the home for just €1. The person would also need to take a $35,000 low-interest rate loan to fix the place up. And they would also have to live in the place for 5 years before they could sell it and make a profit, giving some less fortunate a chance to buy these places. However, if they tried to sell these for more money, no one would buy them. Despite this, there are many people who are considering taking the UK up on its offer. By the way, there are currently 600,000 empty homes in England.